Hello, welcome to another immigration art video. My name is Art Serratelli, and together with my law partner Mara Mijal, the two of us are the attorneys that run the Serratelli Mijal PLLC immigration law firm. We've got clients all over America and all over the world. If you've got a question about anything, send us an email. If you've got a question, we'll have an answer. This video is the analysis of the new STEM extension rules that grant 24 months of STEM extension instead of 17. I've got, from my notes here, again, nothing fancy. I just took some notes after reading the regulations, and I've got 6 points. 6 points I'd like to illustrate for you. The main 6 points of the new rule. All right, new STEM OPT regulations. Point number 1. This one goes without saying. You're allowed to get 24 months of OPT extension if you're a STEM major instead of the old 17 months. This is cool. That lawsuit by those people in a union in Washington State backfired. They didn't like 17 months of OPT. Boom, now it's 24. New STEM OPT regulations. Point number 2. Now this is a good one. Listen to this. In the olden days, prior to May 10th, 2016, you can only have one STEM extension for your entire academic career. Now you can have 2. Are you kidding me? That's 2 3-year periods in an academic career. That's 6 years. If you can't get a green card from 6 years of OPT in an academic career, you're not doing something right. Okay, so here's how it works. You get OPT, you get STEM extension, and that's at a level of education down here. You get another higher level of education, and you study STEM again, bam, you can get another STEM extension. That's a gift. New STEM OPT extension regulations. Point number 3. Are you ready? And I'm just reading right from my notes. I read the regulations. I read them, boiled it down to this much, and here's point number 3. Point number 3. Students currently on OPT related to a non-STEM degree. Okay, so pretend you have an MBA and you're a financial analyst. Okay? If you're on right now, currently, 12 months of OPT related to a non-STEM degree, you can apply for STEM extension of this MBA related OPT. You can get a STEM extension of that based on a previous STEM degree that you earned in the United States from a qualifying U.S. institution, and that degree has to be earned within the 10 years, within the 10-year period prior to your extension application. How amazing is that? And then the only other loose end here is that you got to show that the training, the OPT STEM extension training, is related to your prior STEM degree. All right, so you're that MBA and you're doing financial analysis for Wall Street firm, and you're doing analysis of the construction sector, and you want to know what rate of return investors can expect if they put their money in the construction commercial real estate industry. Okay? You happen to be a civil engineer because you studied civil engineering in your undergraduate school. So you got 12 months of MBA master's degree OPT, 12 months. But you're like, wait a minute, I don't want to quit this job because the 12 months are coming up soon. I want to extend my MBA 12 months for an extra 24. And I'm going to do it with my bachelor's degree from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. I studied engineering there, and I'm gonna get an MBA OPT extension because an MBA is a master's level, a higher degree, and the analysis you're doing with your MBA is related to the industry that was the subject of your STEM studies in the bachelor's program. Again, what? I don't think the full impact of these rules are going to sink in. I really mean it. We got to just take all the ideas currently in our head, rip them out, and replace them with a new way of thinking. This is great. This is wonderful. You got to build your strategy. You got to build a strategy using these new rules. It's the best. I can't say this enough. All right, new STEM OPT regulation. Point number 4. And this one is a drag, but bear with me. The new rules, since OPT is, quote, optional practical training, wouldn't it be nice if we had some proof that you were really being trained? This is what the union, that Washington Tech union, had a bee in their bonnet. They were worried that you really weren't training and learning anything. It was just people out there loose doing whatever they wanted to do. So, all right, to keep the union quiet, to shut them up, now you have to fill out a training program. So, don't make a big deal about this. Just do it. And now the question is, who should do it? I don't think it's reasonable to ask your DSO, your school advisor, to do it. I don't think that's reasonable. I seriously doubt if anybody in HR at your employer wants to fill out a training program plan. Good luck with that. My advice is you do it. And if you need help, I'll help you. I'll help you. And it's not because I want legal fees. I mean, I'll charge you for it. But the reason is because you are the only one motivated to fill out this 7-page application that describes your training plan. Is it a pain in the neck? No. It just has to be internally consistent and logical. Can you discuss the plan with your supervisor, your manager, and then you go off, he assigns you, he delegates to you to write up the plan that you and he described, and then you summarize it with my help? Sure, because I'll tell you what, the manager's too busy to do it, the people in HR certainly don't want to do it, and it's not appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for your advisor to do it. What's the advisor? The advisor's out of school. This is training in a company. I'll help you because you're the one most motivated to get the work done. That's my advice about this. Who is an appropriate employer to offer training? Okay? Now, I printed this out because it's big, it's bold, it's important, it's a change, and you really need to get what they're saying because this change really is to keep the union happy, to shut that union up with all their complaining, and to be honest, I agree with the union in this particular instance. The union's right, so listen, please. You'll rarely hear me ever agree with a union. But let's go through the government's wording, and then I'll translate it into plain English. The government's polite. I'm not gonna be polite, okay? Here we go. There are several aspects of the STEM OPT extension that do not make it apt for certain types of arrangements, employer-employee arrangements, including 1. Multiple employer arrangements, 2. Sole proprietorships, 3. Employment through temp agencies. 4, employment through consulting firms, where the arrangement with the consulting firm is to put you in another company as labor for hire. And 5, other kinds of relationships that the government doesn't think constitute a bona fide employer-employee relationship. Okay, that's the first part of this paper. What's that mean? It means if you're working, you better have a supervisor and a manager who make sure you're learning what they're supposed to be training you to do under the training program. And here's what you got to do. Have a continuity of training. You got to be in one place with a supervisor long enough to make the training stick. We'll go through the list. So if you are 1, in an arrangement where you work for company A and they have affiliated companies B and C and they bounce you all around, no. Who's your boss? What are you learning? Why are you going to company C? Are you on their payroll? And then company B puts you on their payroll? Now, if you're in an affiliated group of companies and it's a small, closely held arrangement, that may be okay because you can get centralized guidance from a manager who has responsibility across affiliated sister companies. That may be okay. But in general, if you're bouncing around and getting on different payrolls, you got no continuity of training. It's a fractured mess. So avoid that, okay? Number 2, why is this troublesome? A sole proprietor. A sole proprietorship is troublesome because you need a supervisor to evaluate you and train you. How are you going to supervise you? And how are you going to train you if you're a sole proprietorship only working with you? So now what does this mean? This means if you're trying to e-verify yourself like we used to do, you can't do that anymore. You got to have a couple people in the firm, at least one other human, to train you. So be smart about this, please. Remember, the union is watching you. Let's look at the next one. Employment through temp agencies who just put you out there working for different companies through a needed period of time. It's strictly a contractual arrangement. Who's training you? The temp agency puts you on the payroll, and then they send you to company A, and who knows what you're doing there. And then they send you to company B. Who knows what you're doing there? And then they send you to company C. Who knows what you're doing there? There is, again, just like the first example, the temp agency who sends you out from place to place to place is creating a kooky system where your supervisor is in another company and they're not providing you any kind of training in the context of a plan, in the context of a continuous optional practical training period of learning. It's a fractured mess. Okay, now the last one. This one burns me. This one makes me so mad because it's so true. There are certain Indian-owned consulting firms in the computer industry who are playing the system and they're making it really, really bad for everybody. What they do, they will hire you as a computer consultant, these Indian consulting firms, and then what they'll do is they will send you out to a site to work. But they don't control you. The Indian company doesn't control you. The client company controls your work. The client company tells you what to do. And it's as if the Indian consulting firm washes their hands of all responsibility for you. How is that an employer-employee relationship? Again, it's a fractured mess. Now, why are we saying that these consulting firms are no good and I would avoid them like the plague? Avoid them like the plague. I gotta ask, why are Indian consulting firms on the hit list and consulting firms like Ernst & Young, Deloitte, the Boston Consulting Group, Bain Consulting, why are all these other consulting groups okay for OPT? Why? Because they control your work. They tell you where to go, they tell you what equipment to use, they tell you what problems to solve, and you report back to the consulting firm because you're working for the consulting firm and your training is coming from a centralized place, and what you're being trained in is the art of consulting. There is a huge difference between going into a client company and being sent there by Ernst & Young to solve a business problem. Like perhaps there is a client with really sloppy internal accounting controls, and you need to go in there and make an analysis of what the problem is and how to fix it. In that case, you're working for Ernst & Young and they're telling you what to do. With the Indian consulting firm, here's the big difference between the two. The Indian consulting firm takes you, throws you into a client, and you're not consulting for anything. You're just doing what the client tells you. You are really, in substance, working for that client. And you're not working for the Indian consulting firm. So in summary, I know I'm getting crazy here, but in summary, stay away from Indian consulting firms. Stay away. Okay? Why does the Department of Homeland Security list the arrangements I previously just described as troublesome? Here's why. One concern arises from the difficulty individuals employed through such arrangements would face in complying with, among other things, the training plan requirements under the new OPT STEM extension rule. Another concern is the potential for visa fraud, visa fraud, visa fraud. One more time, visa fraud arising from such arrangements. Visa fraud? What do you mean? It means if you're working for a consulting firm that really doesn't control your work and just throws you into a company who then, in turn, treats you like an employee, you're really an employee of the client and you're pretending to work for the consulting firm. Same thing for the temp agency. All the other arrangements I just discussed are malarkey, they're full of baloney, and this is a legitimate gripe on the part of the union. And I gotta tell you, follow these rules. Follow the rules. One more time, follow the rules. Okay? All right. New STEM OPT extension regulations. Point number 5. Are you ready? Here we go. Students must submit a self-evaluation signed by their employer every 12 months, and they must reconfirm, and the student must reconfirm their participation in the OPT program with the designated school officer every 6 months. Okay? Why? Well, this builds on what I said before. The government expects continuity in a training program. It's a program. You got a plan, you got objectives. Every 12 months, evaluate yourself. Are you on track? Are you meeting your goals? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Evaluate yourself, let your employer read what you wrote and sign off on it. Then, by the way, every 6 months, check in with your school and tell them you're still in the optional practical training program. Why? Because the government wants to see that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Why? Because the unions complained, and again, this is kind of I got to give them credit. I mean, this is training. New STEM OPT extension regulations, point number 6. This one's short and sweet. The Department of Homeland Security has the authority to conduct site visits at the place of employment. Because if you say you're working at Monsanto in the research and development department, and the government drops by to say hello and checks to see what you're doing, where's your desk, where do you sit, what are you doing right then, right there. They may check the payroll records to see if you're getting paid in accordance with the OPT regulations. They want to see you doing what was described in your training program. If you're mopping the floor or cleaning the bathroom, that's a problem. If you're not even working for Monsanto and Monsanto puts you with some sort of a farmer and you're really working and taking orders from the farmer, then you're an employee of the farmer. That's bad. And don't get me started with these IT consulting firms. They're not consulting on anything. They're throwing you out there like a piece of meat. They're throwing you out there like a hired hand, taking orders from the client. In a consulting arrangement, the client's not the boss. Your consulting firm manager is your boss. So there you have it. If you have any questions, send us an email. Email is your best bet, and then we'll schedule a time to talk from email, and we'll take it from there. Thanks for watching.